everyone, it's Toyin and I'm back again with another video. I'm serving you African princess, Niger goddess. A bit glammed up today because I've just been at an event that was a Nigerian event with my mother. So I thought, seeing as I'm all glammed up, I'm going to jump on here and share with you my 2018 Christmas reading list. So, because I have other commitments such as studying and so on, I can't read the volume of books that I normally would like to read around this time of year. However, I have chosen 6 books that I'm going to engross myself into over the Christmas period. And they are books that are already in line for my reading, and some of them are books that I've wanted to read for absolutely ages. Actually, I said 6 books, but it's actually 7. Forgive me. So the first book that I wanted to read over the Christmas period is a book that I've been coveting for a very, very long time, called The Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, which is actually fitting that I am starting off with a Nigerian author, seeing as I'm all dressed up in Nigerian regalia today. So this book is basically the African version of Harry Potter. So it's set in Oshun, which is in Yoruba land, you know, and I'm a Yoruba woman, and which is very, very exciting for me because, you know, this really literally is speaking my language. Literally. So it's set in Oshun in Yoruba land, and strangely something has happened and magic has disappeared completely from the land. And it's about this young girl's quest to bring magic back into the world. And it just takes you through this mystical journey in the heart of Yoruba land, where there are magical lions and, you know, just a world full of just these enchanting beings. So because I loved all things Harry Potter, I am sure that I'm going to adore all things Children of Blood and Bone. And it's meant to be like this next big thing, and basically the movie rights have already been bought. The next book in the series is coming out in January, so hence I have to get my skates on and really read this book before the end of the year. And I'm just so excited. I mean, just Harry Potter set in Yoruba land, set in Africa, set in Yoruba land, and with just completely new characters and new imaginings. Can you just get enough of it? I just can't. I can't. So I'm so excited to read Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. So the second book I'm going to be reading is Fairest, which is the 4th book in the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa, Meyer. Now, if you've seen my previous reviews of Cinder and Scarlet, and depending on when I upload, Cress and Winter, this book is a retelling of basically how Queen Levana, who is essentially the evil queen in all of the previously named books, how she came to be, what happened to her to make her just this evil queen, so to speak. So I'm very, very excited to read that because it kind of helps me complete you know, my journey with the series. And then also the 3rd book I'm going to read is the last book in the series, called Stars Above. Now, Stars Above is a collection of 6 stories that basically just kind of fills in the gaps and ties everything together. It explains all the holes that were in all the other books. So how does Cinder get to New Beijing? How did Wolf go from being a young man or a young boy and being transformed into this hybrid killer? You know, how did Winter realize that her destiny, you know, was what it was in the end? I don't want to give it away. So it just kind of is meant to tie everything together, and I'm really, really excited to read that so that any questions that I may have about the entire series will be answered in that book. So where are we? We're at number 3. Okay, so the 4th book that I'm really, really, really excited to read, and I actually hauled this one during the Black Friday sale, and it is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now, this book was released last year and in some countries published in January of this year, and it's basically a story of a half human, half fae girl called Jude, and she is basically trying to gain her place in the high court of fairies, and it's just basically her journey for acceptance and, you know, going through whatever she's going through to gain acceptance in this high court after her parents were murdered by we don't know who. So it just sounded like such a great plot. It sounded like a good idea for the YA fantasy world, and it is, if you forgive me, I will check my notes, it is actually part of a series called the Folk of the Air trilogy. So it's the first book in the Folk of the Air trilogy, and I think that this is, I mean, it's right up my street, so it's probably most definitely something that I'm going to be reading and the whole series of. So I'm really excited about that. It's you know, received a lot of acclaim. I came across this book on Bookstagram. So if you don't know about Bookstagram, it's, you know, basically like Instagram but for books, but on Instagram. So I came across this on Bookstagram, and it just seems like such an exciting YA fantasy book, so I would definitely be reading that one over the Christmas period, and I think it might be the next series that I'll be, you know, keying into. So the fifth book that I'll be reading over the Christmas period is Graceland by Kirsten Cashore. Now, this book I have been wanting to read for years. I was basically, I used to follow Trudy Canavan on her website, and Trudy Canavan mentioned that it was one of the books that inspired her when she was writing YA fantasy books such as the Black Magician trilogy, which I have reviewed. So please check out my review of Black Magician trilogy if you want to know what I'm talking about. So again, Graceland follows the story of a young woman called Katza, who was born with this unique ability to kill with her bare hands, and people that are born with this ability are called the Graced. And basically she happens to be the niece of a king, and he ends up using Katza as his own personal assassin. So this just sounds like a wonderful book that might be full of political intrigue, and I really, really like books like that, like Game of Thrones. It's just full of political intrigue and maneuverings around a complex universe or political space. So I'm really excited to read that, especially because it comes highly recommended by one of my favorite authors, and I just think I'm gonna love it. So the next book that I'm going to be reading over the Christmas period is called The Precepts Fury by Jim Butcher. So this is the fifth book in the Codex Alera series, and I've already been reading the first few. I think is it the fourth or the fifth? I can't remember. Isn't that a shame? Can't remember how many books there are in the series. Sorry. So basically, this is the next one from the Captain's Fury, which I'm currently reading, of the Codex Alera series. And it basically, the Codex Alera follows the journey of a young boy called Tavi. And he lives in this world where most people in his world are born with some magical ability of some sort. But Tavi just never had this ability, and he was basically a bit of a weirdo for not having this ability. But despite his disability, so to speak, he's able to navigate a very, very complicated political world, and basically, like all the other nations that don't have the ability that his countrymen have, are generally in constant war and conflict with his nation. And Tavi somehow becomes a bridge between different countries and his own. And basically it goes through his journey from boyhood to adolescence to adulthood, and how he basically brings everybody together despite being like this disabled kid that doesn't have these magical abilities. And as you go on in the different books, you come to discover why Tavi doesn't have this ability, and you come to learn more about Tavi and essentially who he is and how integral he is to his country and the support and the other countries that his own nation is constantly at war with. So I'm going to do a full review of the Codex Alera series because I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but it is one that has been quite tricky for me to wrap my head around initially, so I've been quite slow in reading it. So you will have to forgive me, but I will do a full review of the entire series and let you know what I think. So that would be the Precepts Fury and the First Law's Fury are the final books in the series that I'm going to be reading over the Christmas period. So I hope that this list gives you some inspiration for or ideas for things that you might want to pick up over the Christmas period. They are very much heavily leaning towards the YA, the fantasy area, because for some reason that's just what I'm really into at the moment. But you will be getting different reviews from me, you know, later on in the month of December that won't all be centered around YA and you know, fantasy and that kind of thing. So I hope that gives you some inspiration for things to cozy up to over the Christmas period. Please like, share and subscribe, and until next time, bye.